Okay. My name is Dean Brookie, Mayor Pro Tem, and I'll call this meeting to order at 6:36 this evening. This is the February 4th meeting of City Council. And I might say that Mayor Youssef is out sick this evening, and Councilor Bateen is on a birthday vacation somewhere. I hope he's having fun, but it leaves the three of us here to carry on business this evening. So with that, I'd like to have a roll call, please.
Councilor Baxter?
Present.
Councilor Noseworthy?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Here. With that, I'd like to identify any actual or perceived conflicts of interest on the agenda this evening.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to ask a question, and based on that, I think I'll pursue whether or not I think there might be a perceived conflict of interest. And my question is, I'd like to get clarification on how we went from a unanimous decision to have a discussion tonight of the potential salary increases to a continuation without any vote or consensus, to changing that to 2 weeks from now. And my concern is that that decision could have put our appointees in a compromising position. And I'll explain why once I hear the answers, if it makes sense. The answer.
Well, I'll take a shot at that and then ask our city attorney to weigh in if necessary. But a couple weeks ago, our last hearing, we did continue that particular issue. There wasn't a consensus. You asked, I believe, for a couple documents which have been distributed. Those included the contract for the mayor, the interim city manager, and this is relative to salary increases for the attorney, city attorney, the judge, and the interim city manager, as I recall. So we decided to continue that. The discussion started with 5 members of council. Tonight we are clearly, thought we would be down 1. We're down, in fact, 2 members of council. The conversation started with 5 members of council and agreed to that continuance. It's customary that 5 people continue that discussion when it's brought back. There was certainly no urgency at that time to make a decision. Clearly, the motion was made to continue. We decided the next meeting, that would be tonight. However, because of the absence of folks, we thought it would be appropriate to move it on to another, continue the continuance, if you
Sure,
will.
my concern is that was a unanimous vote taken by the city council with a confirmed date to go forward with this. And then unexpectedly yesterday, it's removed from the council agenda with no explanation and no consensus building. So I've been told that nothing happened without a consensus of the city council, but yet this got removed. And the reason I say this, if I may, is 2 things. I think it's important that we continue the business of the city, even if people are gone. I think that's very important. I recognize this, but there will be it's setting a precedent. But the issue why I raised it with consent and possibly putting our appointees in a compromising position is that if we were voting tonight, and I see the point, if we delayed by 2 weeks, if we had 4 tonight, it would take 3 to get an approval, 75%. If we wait 2 weeks, it only takes 60%, which could be in our potential employees, our appointees, it could be potentially in their self-interest. Mm-hmm. So I'm concerned how that came about, and did any of our our appointees be involved in that discussion? And was there any, and these are questions, I just want to clarify for the record that there's not a potential or for a perceived or real conflict of interest by delaying this decision.
Well, and excuse me if I can clarify who you're asking the conflict of interest would be about, and who would have the conflict of interest in this case?
Well, I would say that, and I don't know because I don't know what took place. If anyone participated in the discussion other than city council, and I think city council changing this without all of us, two city members acting without the whole, is not a precedent I think should be employed. And I think that if anyone was involved in the discussion, then they probably, without, and you don't always think on the spur of the moment, I recognize that you're acting, you're trying to move things. But they probably should have recused themselves from any discussion of if it could have benefited them by delaying this vote.
Well, I can tell you the conversation took place between Mayor Youssef and myself regarding when we saw it on the agenda, reviewing the agenda, and Mayor Youssef asked if that could be delayed for till Councilor Bettine, given the fact and the facts that we all started, 5 people were in the room, and when the conversation started, we all agreed that it should be continued till we all had information and we all should be able to vote on that issue. And so by simply delaying it, certainly, like I said before, it wasn't an urgent issue. If there is a salary increase determined to be appropriate, then it will be retroactive, possibly. So
So the city attorney and the interim city manager?
it was the mayor who establishes the agenda, made that choice, and I don't believe she has a conflict of interest in this situation.
And how does something get changed without a consensus by the city council?
The agenda is set typically by the mayor, and that doesn't.
And that agenda was set until 3:15 yesterday.
It was, it was changed Monday in a conversation. Mayor Youssef asked for that to be changed, and it was changed. I don't know when you were notified, but it was changed. That ultimately was published.
May I make a
I
suggestion?
don't know what you're getting, what the
May I
goal
make a
is.
suggestion?
Yes.
If it's okay with Councilor Noseworthy and with you, could we
Sure.
change the order so that we can have our presentations and
I
then
think
we
that's a
can
great idea.
continue this discussion at a later time in the meeting somewhere?
Sure, and as it stands, it's continued for another day. I mean, when you say date specific, we said that the next appropriate council meeting.
We didn't say
That's-
appropriate, we said the next city
That's
council.
typically, I've never done this for a few
I'll
years.
follow Councilor Baxter's suggestion that we bring
Well, I
it
just
up.
want to follow up now, if I could, to answer your question.
Well, my question is,
Because quite honestly, I don't care to talk about it a whole lot later.
my question is, we voted on something. We voted,
To continue.
no, not to continue indefinitely. I listened to it. We voted to have it brought up at the next city council member meeting. It was on this agenda, and then it was removed from the agenda. And it was removed from the agenda because we didn't have everyone there. I understand that, but that sets two things. The issue is that always going to be the case? If we don't have everyone at a meeting, that you can say, well, we're not going to have a discussion of this or a vote. And how is it that a vote gets overturned? And then by moving it to a different date, my question is,
I
is
want
that
to
we could
clarify,
have,
the vote was not overturned. You're misrepresenting what actually happened here. It was not overturned. It's in a continuance state, and it'll be continued to another meeting. That's simply all that has been done.
and I'll come back, there was no amendment or issues. I look to our city attorney for this because it's an unusual circumstance. And I find it peculiar that a decision's made without involving all of council in changing the agenda for a meeting. I don't think
It's, all I can say is it's certainly been done in the past. It's been, as long as I've been on council, this has been activity that that has taken place in 8 years that I've been on council.
And I would offer that respectfully, I question the procedure and the precedent that's taking place.
Okay? With that, we'll move on to public participation, and I would like to mention that we have had, due to the fortunate publication of an unfortunate depiction of the 32nd Street Bridge, a number of public comments, both in emails to city councilors, to the Herald, and a number of other sources. So I'd like to, in response to those, that
Dean, I'm sorry, this is public participation, I believe? That-
And I would like to have Amber talk about this so that the public can decide whether they want to comment today or in any of the number of other forums that are being formulated so that the groups can decide when their public participation is most effective and in which form they'd like to take that before they speak today. And they could speak today and in any of the number of forums. But I'd like to have a depiction of the number of opportunities that the public will have, and that is public participation. So we'll start with that and go right into these folks.
So I'm sorry, what are you asking for?
A little presentation of the dates and times of the public process that we will be entering regarding the 32nd Street Bridge.
And I think that could come under the city status report, could it not?
I think it's most appropriate at this point in time so that those folks that are going to comment can decide whether to comment now or at one of these other forums, was the purpose of my introduction of this at this time.
All right, highly unusual, but okay.
Well, I think it's timely, efficient, and allows these people that do want to talk about this very important issue to talk here, now, or some other more impactful time. Okay, Amber?
Okay. So the 32nd Street Bridge will have an additional public process that will be taking place or continuing to take place. We have 4 additional meetings scheduled for the public to provide opportunity to provide additional comment and additional to the comment that has already been received via email from council and other means of communication. On February 12th at 5 p.m. during the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting, there's time for public comment. At that meeting, the board will be reviewing the renderings that will be coming to council on the 18th. On February 18th, we'll have our standard city council meeting here, and there will be the public comment period at the beginning of the meeting. At that meeting, Kathy Metz will be providing council presentation on renderings, as well as provide council some time to ask additional questions of her related to the project and the process. And then on February 26th, the Multimodal Advisory Board meeting will be held here at City Hall at 4 p.m. There will be public comment at that meeting as well, at the front end of that meeting, and Ms. Metz will be there to provide an overview of the renderings and answer questions for that board as well. And then finally, there is an open meeting specifically, excuse me, targeted at this project for additional public comment that will be held at the Recreation Center at 5 p.m. So February 27th, which is a Thursday.
Excellent.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that summary. And with that, we have folks that are signed up. Number 1, Werner Heibel.
Do you want me to be the...
I'm actually going to talk about the 32nd Street Bridge. And at this point,
Werner, if you come on up and speak. And I might, just for the record, say this section of the agenda is set aside for public to provide comments or ask questions regarding items that do not otherwise appear on the agenda. City Council will not respond to questions from the dais, but the citizens should address their comments directly to the City Council. Citizens wishing to speak during this section of the agenda shall sign up prior, which you have done. Citizens will be called individually, and comments are limited to 3 minutes. City manager will signal when 30 seconds remaining by raising her hand, and any audiovisual materials must be provided to the city clerk by noon the day before. And so we're so happy to have you, Werner.
So Amber has designated me as the timekeeper because it might be easier for them to see me. So just so you know.
since I'm here, I will state briefly now 3 minutes. I have to really hurry. I'm not going to talk about the design, but the process. And I realize there's a great benefit to have an engaged community and members of the community that have passion, but it's also a great challenge, because when you have passion, and I realize that my own items or specific interests of climate change, of environment, of renewable energy, my passion sometimes shades how I present or how I view things. And I really feel when it comes to the bridge that individuals, advisory boards, their passion may have overruled their common sense on the greater interest of the community. Specifically, when it comes to priorities, infrastructure always comes first. Sewer, water, street, police station, even the city hall. That should have been known 10, 15 years ago. And I truly believe that if the community would have been presented with the challenges that you face financially, that maybe the parks tax, Parks and Rec sales tax would not have been approved at the same level. And I think when it comes down to the 32nd Street Bridge, one really needs to look at the opportunities that were missed to inform the community in a comprehensive manner. So at this point, I really encourage you to look at this and maybe go back and see what you can do, because $4 million is a lot of that can be done. When I think of Forecore has submitted a project for energy efficiency, for which it was not funded. Well, $4 million would provide an audit for every house in the community. And climate change, to me, for example, has a much greater priority than a 32nd Street Bridge that can be solved with other means or the Camino del Rio. So, but ultimately it's the council's responsibility, and I don't envy you for that, to have to provide oversight in an engaged community and deal with the passions of people, advisory boards, and staff that have their personal interests. So I just encourage you to go back again and look at the primary interests that the community, that the city has versus items of interest or personal interest.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Werner. And, hopefully that's exactly what this process will bring about, is a fresh look. Thanks so much. Next is Christy McMullen. No, you're okay? Okay. We'll see you later in a second. Yeah, thanks. McGordon family, the McGordon family, same? Okay. Well, with that, we'll end our public participation for the moment and get on to proclamations and presentations.
Excuse me.
We have two proclamations tonight, a couple of my favorites. First is Scouting Day proclamation, and followed right after that by the 100th anniversary of the League of Women Voters. So we'll start with the Scouts. So if I could have Mary Bates, District Chairperson of the San Juan Mountains District, the Great Southwest Council, meet me at the podium. Mary, thanks so much.
Absolutely, thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'll give you the Scout.
Shake, right.
I might have forgotten that, so
Other way.
Thank you very much for being here tonight, and we'll get a picture with all these guys up here shortly. But I'll read this as a proclamation for Scouting Day. Whereas the Boy Scouts of America, founded on February 8, 1910, is one of the largest organizations in the United States serving youth, and whereas the Boy Scouts of America is a federally chartered organization recognized by Congress for its ability to train youth in outdoor skills as well as to teach them patriotism, courage, self-reliance, and kindred virtues, as officially signed by President Woodrow Wilson in June of 1916, and whereas more than 110 million Americans have participated in BSA programs during some part of their childhood or adult lives, and whereas the mission of the BSA is to prepare young people to make ethical and moral choices over the lifetimes by installing them in values of the Scout Oath and the Scout Law, and whereas the BSA's current aims of scouting focus on 4 primary objective areas: character, citizenship, personal fitness, and leadership. And whereas the BSA serves the Southwest Colorado youth ages 5 to 21 through Cub Scouting, Scouts BSA, and Venturing, training them in responsible citizenship, character development, and personal responsibility through a balanced program, including outdoor activities and educational instruction. And whereas scouting units have been chartered through local community organizations for over 80 years in the Durango area, and whereas Scouts and Scouters participate in regular service through the community lending support to relief efforts, volunteer organizations, and trail maintenance and improvement, and whereas we must recognize that our community is positively impacted by the youth who participate in programs provided by the Boy Scouts of America, the importance of the ideals and values instilled in them, and their contributions as respectful and diligent citizens. Now, therefore, I Mayor Melissa Youssef, she'll sign this for you, thank you. Mayor of Durango, do hereby proclaim February 8th, 2020 as Scouting Day. And it's signed by, actually, I'll be able to sign this for you. Thanks so much. And because we have the scouts come on up and we'll get a photo. And let's do it right up in front so I can have my counselors join us and get a photo shot right here in front of council.
Do you want us up here, Dean, or down there?
Why don't you come on down? Sir, why don't you come on? Yeah. So the scouts? Oh, okay.
That's funny, she read. Prepared to do that. I think we need to talk about a policy, because we don't really have a policy. It's good.
So I understand that a few of these young gentlemen have a few things to say, and so if we can take a couple minutes for those that have prepared something to say to council and to the community this evening, come on up.
Yeah, and I would just like to say on behalf of the district, we're really thankful that you guys have declared Saturday as Scouting Day for us. We actually have invited scouts and scouters from our entire district, which goes all the way from Cortez over to Red Mesa, to come to Durango on Saturday. We're going to have a big celebration for the 110th birthday. So we're just really grateful that you've made this proclamation for us.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
Well, who wants to come up first? And I can start with saying I was an Eagle Scout, and I was also a Vigil Honor member of the Order of the Arrow. So come on, just say your name real loud and what you want to say.
Hello, my name is Hunter Yarbrough. I'm a 5th grade student at Animas Valley Elementary, and I'm in Pack 502, Webelos, Den 5. This is my 5th year of being a Cub Scout here in Durango, and one of the reasons I think having a Scout Day would be beneficial to Durango is the awareness that it would have on all the young kids out there that do not know what Scouting is all about. Scouting is a great way to create community involvement, which is one of the reasons why I enjoy Scouting so much. I enjoy making holiday wreaths for Four Corners Assisted Living Center and helping collect food for those in need of this town. So please consider having a Scout Day in Durango. Thank you.
Come on up and say your name and look right in the camera up there too. Or read you. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Henry, and I am Webelos 2, Den 5, and Pack 502. And I have my own opinions for why I think there should be a Scouting Day. 1, Scouts is important to me because it teaches you survival skills that you can use later on in life, and because it's just fun in general. And it also teaches you to help people and do the right thing. And also, it'll give you more social skills and benefit you later on.
Awesome.
Very nice.
Hello, my name is Finley. I go to Miller Middle School. It's my 4th year of being a Cub Scout. And my favorite thing about being a Cub Scout is meeting new people and doing all the outdoor activities. And also to help people who need help.
Hi, my name is Peter Conger, and I go to Needham Elementary. I am a Webelos 2 for Pack 502. I think it would be important that Scouts get a Scout Day because in Scouts I learned a lot of good survival skills and ways to help our community and become a good citizen. That's why I think Scouts would be good.
Yeah.
Any more? You guys are awesome. All right.
Oh, good.
Okay, my name is Caleb Bates. I am the Assistant Senior Patrol Leader of Troop 501, and I go to Mount Middle School. And the reason I think scouting is really important is because it teaches you skills that you will use in the rest of your life, no matter what career you decide to choose. And another thing that I think is important for scouts is that on the 22nd of February, we collect food for the food bank. So it's really important to donate so that we can give some people who don't have food, the food that they need to survive. So I really think scouting is important.
Very good.
Well, thank you all for being here this evening, and yeah, look forward to next year when you come back. Absolutely. Our next proclamation is, if I could have Jean Arrow come on up and join me, and we'll read this. Thank you, Jean. It's a familiar place for you to be.
I have been here before.
This is a proclamation for the 100th anniversary of the League of Women Voters. So whereas the League of Women Voters of the U.S. is a nonpartisan political organization founded on February 14th, 1920, right in there with the Scouts, actually.
10 years later.
Yeah. That has fought ever since to improve our system of government and impact the public policies through citizen education and advocacy. And whereas the League of Women Voters of La Plata County, formerly LWV of Durango, is an organization which has been committed to registering, educating, and mobilizing voters in Durango and La Plata County as a local member of the League of Women Voters for the U.S. since 1945. And whereas the League of Women Voters of La Plata County's work to safeguard democracy, leads to civic improvement for our community, and whereas the LWVLPC has worked in our community to ensure our elections are free, fair, and accessible, and whereas the LWVLPC has worked to hold the public trust by bringing elected leaders and the public together through nonpartisan civil means through advancing solutions, and whereas Durango and La Plata County have benefited tremendously from the countless volunteer hours donated by League of Women League members over its 75-year history of enhancing democracy. Now, therefore, I, Melissa Youssef, Mayor of the City of Durango, do hereby proclaim the 14th day of February 2020 as LWV Making Democracy Work Day, in honor of the 100th anniversary of the League of Women Voters of the U.S. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
Feel free to make a couple statements.
So thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Brookie and the City of Durango. To commemorate this milestone event and to continue the League's history of educating voters, on February 14th, the entire community is invited to an open house at the Clerk and Recorder's Office on 679 Turner Drive in Bodo Park. Members of the League, along with Tiffany Parker, our county clerk, and Aaron Hutchins, the elections officer, will be offering tours of the new election facility. Fair and open voting is the cornerstone of our democracy. All voters should be assured that each ballot cast is handled properly and confidentially and is correctly counted in a secure manner. This is exactly what happens at La Plata County, and the League wants everyone to see and understand this process. So please join us on Friday, February 14th for our 100th anniversary open house, and it runs from noon until 3 p.m. Following this event, I want to mention one other, is that the League is partnering with Fort Lewis College Political Science Club, and they're going to have a ribbon cutting for a new ballot box that will be available on Fort Lewis campus at the Center of Southwest Studies. The ribbon cutting will take place at 3:30 in the afternoon, And we're excited that immediately following that event, for Fort Lewis students, there is going to be an event called Fall in Love with Voting. There is a tie-in to Valentine's Day. And this is all a part of Fort Lewis College Civic Engagement Initiative, which the League is a very close partner in. So I want to thank you for this recognition, and I also want to give a special League thank you to the city councilors for your public service.
Thank you.
You bet.
Oh. Okay.
I can,
Which meeting was that? Was that the?
that was the slate. And I can,
Okay, thanks so much for being here this evening. Thank you. Everyone, you bet. With that, I'd like to move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is intended to allow City Council by a single motion to approve matters that are considered routine or non-controversial. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or requests an item be removed from the consent agenda and it's considered separately. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered under agenda item 6.
Okay, great.
I can.
Do you want to?
So I have one thing. I'd like to ask that you could pull item 6.1, approval of minutes for the special city council meeting. I have one amendment. It says that I was at the meeting, however, I was not. So if I can request that.
Interim city manager has that requested to, normally I would read these first, but let's consider that stricken from the consent
Well,
agenda.
or we could leave it there, but approve it as amended.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's how I've done it with
Okay.
Amy before,
Yeah.
just call it the change.
Prefer it that way. So perhaps we should have a reading of the consent agenda, and then any councilors that would like to pull anything, we'll just take that into account.
All right, so the consent agenda, 6.1 through 6.3 are approval of minutes. 6.1, the special city council meeting of January 8th, 2020. 6.2 is the joint study session of January 21, 2020. And then 6.3 is the regular meeting of January 21, 2020. And then items 6.4 and 6.5 are requests for public hearings with the proposed date of February 18th, 2020. 6.4 is to consider the adoption of the City of Durango and La Plata County Strategic Plan on Homelessness. And 6.5 is to consider granting an easement to Fast Track Communications to install underground fiber optic communication services to 1050 Avenida del Sol.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. If any other items to be pulled from the consent agenda? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda with item 6.1 amended as noted.
Excellent.
Second.
Excellent. It's been moved and seconded. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes?
Councilor Baxter?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Yes. With that, we have a fairly light evening this evening, in that we have no public hearings. So we have no legislative or policy-related hearings or any quasi-judicial hearings. We have no items that the city attorney would like to address at this time. No introduction of ordinances. So we will move on to item 12.1.1, which is a discussion and possible action concerning equitable public access to ebooks.
Excellent. So, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Brookie. As an overview as to why this is appearing on the agenda, I've followed the policy flow chart. When there's a request for signatures or support for lobbying our legislatures or recommending support or not support of a future House bill or one that's on the table or Senate bill. And so I have our library director, Sandy Irwin, here, and she can give you a brief overview of what we're requesting. And the council would like to sign on, then we will move forward with that.
Good evening. So I am coming to council today because it's been an issue for libraries for a while about equitable access to ebooks. And I prepared a memo, which was part of your agenda packet, and it's become more restricted over the last few months, especially with Macmillan Publishing, where they have enacted essentially an embargo on libraries from purchasing their e-materials. Why is this important? Because so many people in our community rely upon ebooks for access. There's a lot of folks who are disabled and cannot hold a physical book. There's a lot of people who need large print, and they come to us and they learn their devices, and they need, while we provide large print books themselves, they are using their devices to expand the print so they can read it better. And it's a real challenge for people. Libraries are about access to everybody. And the restrictions that are being put on, not only by Macmillan, but by all the big 5 publishers, are limiting our ability to provide information to the public. Not only is it a restrictive cost, it's different restrictions on how often something can be checked out. So when we purchase something for the library, an actual physical item, we get fairly hefty discounts, I must say. Thank you for that happening. And we keep those books until they fall apart or people are no longer interested. That's not the same with ebooks. Some publishers have put restrictions on. You get 26 uses from a book, but they might be charging you $50 for that book. So you may spend $10 on an ebook, where libraries are spending a lot more, but they're limiting how often it can be used. So there's been a lot of research done, and cities and counties and municipalities from around the nation are signing on to a statement from the Urban Libraries Council so that they can show that government is in support of libraries and is in support of finding ways for the publishers to work better with us. Publishers have always fought against libraries having access to books and providing them. And I understand it's a real challenge because authors want to make money as well, but there's a lot of misinformation being fed to publishers about how libraries take away money from the industry, when in fact our goal is to get people to read and to love books and to discover authors, and then to go out, and studies have actually shown that when people discover an author and they like an author, they are more likely to go buy something when it comes out. So hopefully you've read the memo that I provided you. I'm here to answer questions. I can talk to you about a variety of things and see if you'd be willing to sign on so that the Urban Libraries Council can move forward with getting as many signatures from around the country as possible. They have just started this initiative. We've only be the second municipality in Colorado to sign on. So far it's Denver, and I think it'd just be great for us to show some support for the Durango Public Library and for libraries in general.
So then what happens once they get all the signatures that they want? What's the
They're
process?
going to, I asked them that, I contacted them and said, tell me what you're going to do with this information. And they said that their next steps are generating public awareness, media coverage, and communications directly to the publishers. They'll also use it in their lobbying efforts. So there's efforts going on in Congress right now to take a look at this within which committee? There is a committee somewhere in my memo. The Judiciary Committee is looking at antitrust information about this as well. So they would use it for lobbying and public awareness and directly communicating to publishers.
It's fair to say that the library board is also in support of this?
I have not talked to them about it yet.
Okay.
When Amber and I went through the process of what this is more city council choosing to sign on. I can bring it back to the board and bring it back if you would like. To give you, if you're curious about how much ebooks cost the Durango Public Library, I know we're always looking at costs. We have 2 different platforms. It's ebooks and e-audiobooks. We have 2 different platforms, Overdrive and RB Digital. Both of them have a $5,000 a year platform fee. If I look at how much we spent on content last year, it was $30,000 between the 2 of them. That averages out, and we purchased 715 e-items. and that averages out to about $42 per item, which is much more than what we pay for a physical book,
Yes.
where we don't have the same restrictions on those.
It's a good comparison, thank you. Yeah.
Any questions?
Any discussion that you want to,
Looking for the motion.
Oh, good point.
yeah.
I didn't think that, so.
I don't see it. Oh, there it is.
I know that serving on the library board as the current liaison to that board, the goal of publishers is to really, I mean, the cost of books, the cost of ebooks in particular, because that's the way it's going, and they see that as their new profit source, is just not accommodating the public in that format, and it's really unfortunate. So I would be personally supportive of this measure.
So the recommendation, which I'm willing to move, is to authorize the mayor to sign the attached statement on equitable public access to ebooks that will be sent to the Urban Libraries Council on behalf of the city of Durango.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Maybe we'll have a roll call, please.
Councilor
Or any
Beck.
further discussion, I might say.
Aye.
No further discussion. Roll call, please.
Councilor Baxter?
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Yes. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you all for your support.
Moving on, our next item is 12.1.2, which is the city status update. Interim
Yes.
Manager Blake.
All right, thank you. So I have a couple of updates for you this evening. The first one is a request for direction from council. We have the next Strategy and Long-Term Finance Advisory Board meeting on February 10th. And in working with the mayor and the chair of that board, we received a request to have city council provide direction on top one, two, or three, so it can be any of the above, items that council would like the board to work on. The staff provided the board an overview of our master plans and needs based on our 2017 engagement process that's been updated. I'll be providing the board the long-term strategy and long-term finance advisory board presentation on departmental needs that were updated recently by department heads. And then we will be giving an overview of one item related to government finance. I haven't decided which item that will be, but the board is seeking direction from council what to work on.
Well, it kind of seems to me that one of the biggest conversations we've had was about the general fund and its issues that we may be encountering in the future with projects that we need to fund and other areas with its viability. So I'm really interested in that, and I think that Mayor Youssef had mentioned the 2005 reauthorization, which would also be a function of that general fund
Absolutely.
conversation. Yeah. And Councilor Patine had mentioned sales tax in the sense that the internet and other types of sales tax like that. And again, that's another topic that could help support what we need to be doing in the general fund. So my sense would be that a great project would be, what are the challenges the general fund is going to be having in the next 5 to 20 years, and how do we meet them? And using all these tools in our basket.
And as they move forward, they'll bring in other, all the other facets of that, which are long-term facilities needs, et cetera.
Absolutely.
So, I'm wondering if that's almost too general to say general fund is like, that's a big topic. But it's really, I mean, what staff has done is given them the tools to dig into whatever direction that leads them. So,
And I think we've all acknowledged the structural problem with the budget, not on the annual basis, but the long term. So I think, building on Councilor Baxter's comment, it's really about stabilizing that and actually strengthening it to be more substantive, to weather changes in our economy.
And I'm sure, to your point, Dean, that they will go, aha, here's this particular area that we need to focus on first out of that area. So.
and then with that astute group of individuals, there's different resources than they may divide and conquer at their determination. So,
But I'd like to also add that our asset management will play heavily into that issue of the budget.
Absolutely.
Without a clear understanding of what we need to address for our infrastructure needs, particularly the public works issues, I think we don't have the full picture.
Yeah. But the Public Works in general is water, sewer, streets, is that how you're looking at it? And those have a dedicated tax funding source, so I'm not at this, that's why I'm kind of thinking we need to look at the general fund first, which is much more dependent upon other vagaries in the situation, so. But if you guys think that's a good way to go?
Well, they asked, we can give them that as a top priority, and they certainly will understand the magnitude of their challenge.
Yes.
And
Well, and then
come
maybe
back
the-
with,
Second one is what Councilor Noseworthy mentioned.
and the asset management, I think we all know that we might hear from them that they would like to have an update of the facilities master plan.
Right.
Ultimately to guide their suggestions back to us. And that's maybe something we'll have to look at funding in the next special appropriation and/or next year's budget. So, okay?
Is that enough guidance?
So we are going to ask them to look at the general fund and the structural issue, ways to stabilize the fund so that we can move sustainably into the future despite changes in the economy, whatever risks there may be or changes that we incur. And then the second piece would be
Let me
ask,
add what to that, though,
Yes.
and also the needs, the future needs that the general fund's going to have to fund.
yeah. And then the next piece would be asset management on the whole, public works specific as well as all of the others. And then, do you want them to look at any, like as the third, the enterprise funds? If I get asked, I would like to make sure to be able to answer them.
I think two's going to be enough for right
Yeah.
now.
The other thing we had on that list was benchmarking other city
That's
metrics
true.
and performances.
Yeah.
That was the third item that
That's
we've
true.
discussed all
In our
along.
original, yeah.
And I think, that is a subset of that to compare ourselves effectively to other communities.
And what good ideas can we pilfer from them?
Okay. Yes, thank you. All right. So we received a summary report from DOLA, and they were concerning the budget that we had submit to them for technical assistance. We received a number of comments from them, and on the whole, they were comfortable with the general fund, and then they had some questions about the enterprise funds. We use a different basis of accounting for the enterprise funds, which is the reason that it's not matching up with the CAFR, two different bases of accounting. And so they recommended that we have the auditing firm look at this as well, and then make sure that they are seeing the same thing that DOLA found. So what we would like, I'm telling you this because it will impact when we bring the budget forward to council. We have been working with a new auditing firm, and they are confident that they will have a team in here, their senior team in here, the last week of February and the beginning of March. So we'll have those on site with the auditing firm, and then we're also contracting with a third party through the auditing firm with a data analytics team to come in, and they will be looking at this as well. So we'll have the information, and we are comfortable with telling council that we will bring forward the budget resolution and appropriations ordinance with corrections, as well as the full budget document on March 2nd.
And Amber, thank you for that. And how is the comparison to last year's budget being corrected, amended, altered so that it reflects apples to apples? You know how we talked about the 20?
Yes. So that's part of this process, and we are asking.
The audit is doing this? Or
No, we have the data analytics team.
Okay.
Coming in, and it'll be a CPA that can come in and assist us with ensuring that, one, the data that's being prepared for the audit is in the framework that the auditors need it in, and then special project on the side to come in and look.
And how far back will they look?
At this point in time, they're doing the 2020, 2019, and then we'll be able to go back further as time permits, but we need to to address this piece first. That's what was recommended to us.
So when you say DOLA is comfortable with the general fund budget aspect of it, that means with all the things that they found that were errors and inaccuracies, and they're making recommendations for change.
So they have a number of changes that are recommended. All of this will be documented and will provide council with a summary of all of the changes, like a reconciliation that shows you
Excellent.
what it was, and then have a summary from DOLA that will be included with that.
A summary of their changes, and then I thought
And
originally...
their comments as
Their
well.
comments, and I thought originally there was also going to be some discussion of best practices.
Correct. So DOLA has made a couple of recommendations for best practices that they see, and then we are also implementing best practices and changes within the finance department, and there will be a summary report that's provided to council of everything that were changed, have changed for that as well.
Those are internal changes.
Internal changes, and then changes to how we're preparing the budget, internal controls, all the best practices that we're implementing.
Excellent.
It would be great to have a
Look forward to
report from their interim finance director.
That's who you'll get it from.
You know, that would be great.
Yes. And then finally, just an update to council. CBI continues to work on the investigation. I don't have any further comments, but I want to make sure that you know that it continues to be ongoing. And then we have our sales tax report. We will be, we are developing another version of the sales tax report. Our sales tax technician in the finance department will be working with businesses, doing some outreach. There's a number of individuals in the community that use these reports, and so we wanted to make sure that we reach out to those individuals, being that we'll be changing this, to know what information they do need, make sure that we have a report that we can provide them that has that information. And then what we would like to do is look at the variance from last year, this year, give you a little bit more information to show you where we are and point in time. So the sales tax report is positive for 2019. If we look at the year to date, these are November sales. Again, I think it's important to note that. We were up 3.1% on the 3% sales tax, and that is a good number. We did not expect to end that high. Again, January, we should have that at the next meeting for you on the December number, so end of year. But sales tax ended good, in a good position. Lodger's tax was up 6.8% for the year, and medical marijuana continues to decrease. Our retail marijuana stayed at about 3% of our total sales tax collections.
I really like the addition of your 5-year history, as well as the comparison year to year in the months, so that we can actually see apples to apples. We've used that phrase a couple of times tonight. So January to January versus just 6 months to 6 months. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Excellent. So thank you for the feedback, and we'll continue to make improvements.
Excellent.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to council reports and actions. Each member is provided an opportunity to report meetings recently attended and discuss topics not otherwise appearing on the agenda. So I invite my fellow councilors to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
So earlier today, I did ask, actually maybe it was even yesterday, I did ask the city attorney for a legal opinion. And so I'm going to look to Dirk to see whether or not he has an answer to the question of, the interim city manager and I talked today too about the process of agendizing and what that looks like. And we don't actually have a policy for how that works, unfortunately. So that's a discussion we probably need to have. But under the current either legality or process that we have been using, if city council votes to have a topic on the agenda on a certain date, and they do that by vote, and it was unanimous in this case, can that be arbitrarily moved to another date?
Again, council doesn't have a specific policy. You know, I'll comment that Mayor Pro Tem said earlier that historically, I think it is fair to say that agenda setting was done in cooperation between the mayor and the city manager. That's how it has historically been done, but this council has chosen to approach setting agendas in a little different process. So without the mayor being here, and I have not spoken to the mayor about this, so I'm not really sure what she was thinking, so I'm not sure it's fair for me to render an opinion about that at this point until, we know all the facts. But I think it's fair to say that we really don't have a policy about this in terms of agenda setting. It may be that, and again, I think I would simply be guessing as to what, her position was on it. Generally speaking, a vote is something that is binding. I think perhaps she saw a vote on the agenda being different than another vote. Again, I can't comment on that. So I do think that perhaps this is something that needs to be addressed in terms of agenda setting, and a policy around that and how that's done. I will comment in general, that things get pulled off the agenda by staff all the time, but I understand that that's not particularly something that council may have voted on to put on the agenda. So there is some normal shifting of agenda items from time to time, and it's not unusual to do that. So without knowing exactly what the thought process was, I wasn't at the meeting, so I can't comment on that. So I guess I would suggest that, particularly since the mayor's not here to describe what happened in her mind about moving this item, I would suggest that perhaps we move it to a date when council can discuss a process and a policy about agenda setting and how that occurs and when something can be changed and when it shouldn't be changed.
May I also just add to that, because I raised it earlier, and I did go back and listen to that motion because I think it's important that we be transparent with each other as well as with the community. That motion was to continue it to this week. It did not include having us all be there, did not set any parameters around it. So as a council person, I often hear we each have one voice, one vote. No one has any more sway than another. So to all of a sudden, without any information or consensus building, have something that was a unanimous motion changed, left me concerned about the protocol, about precedent, and about, given the nature of this that was discussing our appointees and potential raises, it caused me a potential angst, possibly. So that's, I think, the issue is this was a voted upon topic. It's not the same as we're not going to discuss this issue of proclamation or something this week. It's not going to fit in the schedule. This was a voted upon item, and it was removed without a consensus. And it could have happened differently. You could have come to this meeting tonight and said, we have this on the agenda. We don't have as many people here. Would anyone like to entertain a continuation motion? And that would have been fully legitimate and open, transparent action, and I would have supported it.
How could that have happened, quite honestly, with
could
them
have
not
been-
been here?
It would have been on the
The
agenda.
very people that we're talking about are not here. That's
You
why it
could
was
have made,
taken
any
off
one
the
of us, it could have been on the agenda.
without the benefit of their interaction, I might add.
We could have.
So that's why it was pulled, so that 5 people started the discussion, 5 people will end the discussion.
That was not the motion. With all due respect, my suggestion is that if we had kept the unanimous decision to have it on the agenda for tonight, any one of us, the 3 of us, could have said, we're not all here. We thought we only might be missing 1, but now we're missing 2. In that spirit and in an open manner, let us discuss whether or not we want to continue this for another 2-week period. I think that's a more collegial and transparent process, and I'd like to suggest that we think about those things, because when something happens without the information, we are 5, not 2 plus 3. We are 5, and I think that needs to be very clear, that it doesn't look like it's a vote is not being considered, a vote is not being recognized.
In all due respect, that's the exact reason, the rationale that the mayor suggested that this be deferred to another meeting time, when all 5 people would discuss it, not 3, and make a vote to continue or not to continue with only 3 of us here this evening. That's the very reason that you suggest that this was continued.
Yes.
And the salient word, I might add, it was continue to another day, not to continue to a date specific.
Yes, it was date specific.
I understand that. It got set for this date. The date was, in my mind, irrelevant to the topic and the decision that was being made, which is, quite honestly, not the most important decision we have to come to as a council in terms of pay raises for 3 people. It was not urgent. It was a conversation that was started amongst 5, a full council, and the mayor thought that all 5 of us should have an opportunity in clear and transparent communication to make that choice.
And my issue is transparent because no one else was contacted about. Is there
Everybody will
consensus?
have an opportunity to weigh in on this topic because of the action that the mayor took.
Dean, so I think, however, what Councilor Noseworthy is suggesting, and I would agree with her, is that if the agenda item had stayed and one of us had suggested, you, for example, or myself, that we continue this for another 2 weeks when all 5 of us can be here, I believe we would have all agreed to do that. And what we're trying to...
I'm not quite certain that's the truth.
Well, I know for myself, I would have agreed.
As would I.
And because I appreciate the desire to have all 5 of us participate whenever we can. And I know that in the past, we've done this 3 or 4 times with study sessions and other votes where we have said, hey, this person can't make it, so is it okay with everyone if we move this to another date? And that's what we've done. And I think that the challenge here is that process that we've been following of saying, yeah, we agree, we need to have all of us here if we can, wasn't honored this time. It was just done unilaterally. So the suggestion would be that we just have a discussion about that and confirm that what we would like to do is honor that desire to have all of us here as often as we can, but recognize sometimes it can't happen, but not do arbitrary movements of agenda items.
But I added it to our topic on, or suggested adding it to March 10th, City Council Policies and Appointee Goals for our study session on March 10th.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, and I would just follow up to say, and I don't think I really answered this question, there's no statutory guidance on agenda setting, there's nothing in the charter, there's nothing in our code about that. So some of this is historic protocol. I understand that this has created an unusual situation, and I do think this does warrant some discussion about how to proceed in the future. I think it's possible that you could have, a policy that says certain kinds of things would it'd be preferable to vote, have a full council to vote on them, but you will have times when things are urgent or emergencies, and I think that that's something that you can just address as you go along. Because sometimes it is appropriate to pull something simply because it isn't ready, that kind of thing. So
Ordinance isn't ready, staff's
ordinance
not
isn't
ready.
ready, right? Those right.
And I don't have any issue with that. I made my issue clear. And it's a change from the practice that we've been following.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to, I was in attendance to the Colorado Association's Keytown meeting last week in Avon, and really intense gathering of city managers and mayors throughout the mountain towns, and some compelling information about tobacco taxes, the polystyrene ban that's being discussed at the state level, and possible endorsement of some of those issues. And so I'll compile that and bring it to council. I think, again, with an abbreviated team here this evening, I'd rather bring that up in 2 weeks from now. Or we may continue, I'm not sure. But I'll let you know. But I'll be back to talk to you a lot more about that in 2 weeks. I would like to just talk about our February 11th study session, where two big items that we're glad to have coming before us, again, not in a public hearing, but but these are items that the public might wish to attend, and that is a presentation, a discussion about the Durango Mesa Area Plan, and followed up by another hour of discussion about our sustainability program update. Those are two really big topics coming up that are of significant concern to many citizens, and I think it might be, we'd love to have you attend. With that, Councilor Baxter.
Oh, thank you. So I attended the Infrastructure Advisory Committee, Advisory Board. Always get all those mixed up. Last night, and it was a great conversation. We talked about creating an alley condition report, similar to what we do for the street index, condition index, so that staff and the community would know the challenges with the alleys, what's wrong with them, what needs to be updated, what the cost might be, and how we might end up prioritizing those. And we should be getting that preliminary condition report at our next meeting next month. So I'm pretty excited about that. And the permit for our wastewater treatment plant is active, and we are discharging water under that permit, and it's all meets standards, so everything is going very well with that. The Vactor garage, and the Vactor is a truck that sucks water up out of a big hole, is under construction out at Santa Rita Park, as well as the admin building is making good progress. The staff also provided the advisory board with some new capital improvement project report forms, so that it's much easier to tell what projects are under construction, when they were first appropriated money for, what percentage-wise, how far along they are, what the anticipated date of completion is, what the cost is, what their status is, so that the advisory boards and the community have a much better idea of what the status of all these capital projects are. So that was the agenda.
May I interject and ask a question?
Sure.
I looked at that capital improvement project, and I do note that there's a program from 10 years ago, and it has not been reappropriated, or from what I can tell, and very little expenditures made upon that. So I think I'm looking to the interim city manager. I'm looking forward to your report. I know you're working on it, but 10 years is a long time to carry a project with no action.
Right, and I believe we have that agenda-sized to have that conversation about CIP reports and policies.
We do.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to ask Councilor Baxter, if you discussed the RFQ, RFP, if you're from academia, it's like RFP, with the water conservation plan.
So we have a draft RFP before the board at this point, and they actually only received that Monday afternoon. So it'll be until next month before they come back with their comments on it. And there was public comment made on it, and they heard it and are willing to consider it.
Good, because I also spoke at a meeting about the important, I think this is for all of the RFPs that come out of the city, that it be important that we not have a prescribed solution that we're looking to then justify, but that we're actually seeking options for the issue. So I think that's very important, that particularly in this case, because it has such huge potential financial impact. I think we need to make certain it's not a prescribed solution.
Okay.
I would just comment, after having responded to a number of RFPs professionally too, is that there are situations where a prescribed solution is absolutely what the RFP dictates. And it's up to the consultant to propose how to achieve that solution. So I don't think that's in this case, I think it's appropriate, but I wouldn't want to I wouldn't want to create a policy around thou shalt not dictate a prescribed solution for every RFP that the city of Durango issues. Because there's cases I can think of where it is not at all appropriate.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting this is a big issue. It's going to involve a lot of community engagement, and I think we need to have looked at multiple options. So I appreciate the care that the board is taking in reviewing this and ensuring that we have options. Thank you.
Sure. So I had one other report in action. I'm going to have another office hours. The last one was so exciting. I loved it. I had 13 people and we had great conversation. So this one will be February 17th from 4 to 5:30 at Animas Chocolate. And I would love to have everybody as possible come join us. And so you know now and can publish it, yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I went out to attend the Moorheart Murphy, the Subaru dedication of the land, and that was great fun. There was everyone from the Southern Ute Indian tribe, the contractors, Jim Moorheart, Pat Murphy, and I got that right? Yeah. They were all out there, and it was, and folks from the paper, and it was a wonderful celebration of commercial activity and development taking place out in Three Springs. And I just want to applaud these longtime Durango residents for their investment in this community and for their investment in Three Springs. I see huge growth potential out there, and I appreciate their efforts. I know it's not always been easy to meet all of the different requirements that we may place, and I appreciate their perseverance. Then the other meeting that I attended was the La Plata County Alliance for Economic Development, and we had some discussion around the Process Improvement Working Group and how that's working. And we also wanted to let folks know that next week, Tuesday at 7:30 at the library, there will be the investors group, and Ellen Roberts will be there talking about the Environmental Impact Fund. So I think that could be very informative to staff, council, and others. So, and then before we go into future on the reports, I don't necessarily maintain office hours, but when people reach out to me, I always try to accommodate their schedules and provide one-on-one or two-on-one. So I appreciate folks wanting to visit with me and talk about the issues, and please just email me and we'll make an arrangement to get together.
Thanks. Yeah, that's, yeah, it should be known that I think all of our cell phones are in the Herald every day. So we invite public participation in any form it comes in. So should we move on to future potential agenda items?
Sure.
Okay. Sure. With that, yeah, let's move on to future potential agenda items. I know that we've got a few that Councilor Noseworthy advanced.
And one that I had advanced, sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Barbara.
So a couple here. I just want to follow up, and we have to do this often in a formal manner up here because we can't necessarily do it via email and have this discussion. So there was an anonymous complaint that was raised. I brought it to the attention of the city attorney and Amber and the council, and I would like to eventually get a report back on the follow-up. I think council should hear the follow-up of that. Whether you're prepared to do it now, I don't think that's
I'm not prepared to do it right now. Dirk and I have had some conversations with parties that are mentioned in the letter, and we're doing our research on closing the loop on the questions that were posed.
Yeah, and that also then brings up my concern around the whistleblower policy.
And that is on the list for the council policies.
Thank you. Then I met with the team that's been working on the UMTRA, the uranium mill, Dean, you're going to help me out, the uranium mill trailings.
UMTRA, yeah. It's good.
I think it's restoration is the R. So we met, you'll recall, there was notice to the city that there were a little over 100 potential sites that might have mill tailings on them, and we've been following up with that. And one of the discussions we had back in June, and Melissa, the mayor, was there along with me, and Amber, I don't know if you were there, but Ron was there at this meeting. We talked about we probably are going to need to look at some changes to our permitting system and to our transfer issues, so transfer of title and building permits. And so I'll be sending a note to council. We'll need a discussion around that of possible things to consider going forward with building permits transfer as it relates to radon and any UMTRA testing.
Can I ask you a question? Was Nicole Killian at that meeting?
No, and it was not the larger group, it's a smaller group, so I'll be sending a note out to the other staffing. It was
Was any of our staff at the meeting?
no, it was at a higher level, mostly on the bills, the legislative bills.
Okay,
So it
great.
starts off as bills, and you want to be
Right.
respectful of people's time, and
Of
then
course.
it migrates into other issues as well. So I'll be sending a note out to all of council, but we will need direction, or if Amber can get the direction now, she can know to follow that. The other issue is, we have this wonderful resource in the San Juan Basin Public Health, and in Leanne Jolin, particularly the executive director. And while she serves on the board of the Multimodal Advisory Board, there are several issues where public health, there's an intersection between public health and our other advisory boards. For example, open space and fire, parks and rec, and access to free exercise capacity, particularly in lower income neighborhoods, or the importance of trees and the water with regard to climate change. And I think it would be helpful if, and Leanne wrote a note about this, if we thought about having her talk to some of the different advisory boards from a public health lens, particularly as we're thinking about how we should be using the 2015 and the 2005 sales tax, dedicated sales tax. I continue to share my concern about, are we doing enough with fire mitigation? And I think getting a public health, she was there at 416, working with that community, and I think it would be very beneficial to our advisory board. So I don't know if you need direction on that, or if it needs to be a future topic.
If council would like me to follow up with Leanne and have her come get on the board agendas that you listed in your email, I can make that happen. I mean, she serves that function on the multimodal advisory board, like you mentioned.
I would certainly like that, and I think it's very timely rather than having to wait and bring this up again, because
What topic is she talking about specifically with the?
I think I could envision her, I don't know, but I could envision on open space, the discussion has come up, are we doing enough for fire mitigation in the next 3 years? Or are we drawing it out? And I think her experience from both working with the Paradise community, not the 416, with the Paradise community, because she was brought in there and worked, and also helping us think through what's the public health ramifications of that, of not being prepared in that regard, or looking at, as we think about fixing up parks or allocating resources, where is the highest benefit from a public health viewpoint, or the value of trees in making our community more resilient and providing shade in different neighborhoods that may not have those same resources. I don't have the full scope, but
I can talk to, if
Yeah.
council provides me the go-ahead and the direction, I'm happy to have a conversation with
it'd be great.
Leanne, and Leanne and I can work together to hammer out what we feel is the most appropriate based on what you just mentioned and what council's directing, and then we can move forward with that.
I would love to see that happen.
Yeah, I mean, San Juan Basin Health is always a resource for virtually everything from fluoride to UMTRA to a number of these things that come up. And I think if she can provide information that is good for decision-making amongst our various boards. I know she is active on the multimodal board. But I would like to know, basically how she's interfacing that with the financial piece that you talked about as well.
I don't know that she has a plan. I just think that as we think about things, we want to make certain those don't drop by the wayside.
Right. And I think if it's good for the boards, it's good for council. So that's the other thing. I think it sounds like a study session to me.
Well, I think the conversation, though, if I'm hearing this correctly, is it's not a big, broad overview. No. It's more specific to what obviously this doesn't apply to every board, but to what a specific board might be focusing on. For example, multimodal, because she's there, but the health benefits of having people out not in their car, traveling in different ways. That wouldn't be a conversation that you'd necessarily have with the library board, for example.
Right.
But there might be some health benefits that the library board, that I don't know of off the top of my head, but that she might want to speak to the library board that aren't appropriate for the Natural Lands Board, for example. So I think it might be more, if I'm hearing you correctly,
Yes.
I think it might be more that it's more specific to, tailored to what
Yes.
each individual advisory board might want to do.
Sure. Well, they're a resource. They're here for a purpose, and that's,
Perfect. A few others that need council direction. I sent a summary of the items we discussed at the Southern Ute Indian Tribe dinner, and then I also brought it up and read it here, and Amber didn't believe we had consensus on going forward, so I wanted to again raise what is the next step with the suggested items for the Southern Ute Indian Tribe that we discussed collectively. Two that immediately come to mind is a request, well, three come to mind, is a request for signage recognizing the tribal council or the tribe's contribution to Three Springs and their development activities to make it come together. With some of the language in youth, that would be a collaborative effort. That's one immediate request. We're hearing loud and clear the desire for a Parks and Rec investment, ideally a park in the Three Springs area, to which they have put in significant resources and are looking at that. And then the third item that they discussed, and I had a follow-up conversation with others in the community, was around concern for the environment, particularly as it relates to Lake Nighthorse and the use of motorized vehicles. So I don't have a prescribed solution, but I think those are some immediate things we could, of those, I believe, 8 items that I summarized, I think those are others. But you two were also there.
Sure, and if I may make a suggestion, I'm wondering if the best way to engage might be at a staff level. And
I just want actions
Yeah.
taken.
Yep, I just wanted to make sure that the list had a number of items, some were smaller, some were larger. Council agreed that that was the discussion, those were the discussion topics. Everyone was very thankful for Councilor Noseworthy putting together the summary of the meeting topics that were discussed. I asked for consensus on this because I need to make sure that with staff capacity, I will say, you are no longer working on this, you are working on making sure that we get signed. I just want to make sure that we're using the resources appropriately. So if council said, yes, move, we can make it happen.
well, so I think prioritizing is also another.
I'll handle that.
But the situation with the signs actually is a Three Springs group situation. So that's not actually something that we actually need to participate in. That's a conversation between the tribe and they.
Except
For
for
future
the trails.
streets.
The trails and
that's true.
future signage. So I was looking at that in terms of trail signage. So in that area, and then we can have staff talk with Three Springs and we can have that additional conversation to move that forward.
And with the tribal council.
And I would suggest that we put it out to the Southern Utes, that we are very interested in this, and let them come to us with what their priorities are possibly, and what their timing might be, because for us to make that decision solely on our own might not be.
Right.
I mean, they are the developers, so as Councilor Baxter mentioned, I mean, the street signs are not our deal. We do have public areas out there in a future park. So the future park is a big funding item that we can prioritize. And so, I mean, there's a lot to parse out in there. I don't think there, and some would have consensus and some not, but we have to be very careful too what we commit to tell them, get back to them that we are doing, because clearly what was mentioned in that meeting was, okay, why don't you change all the street signs to say something about you? And I'd say,
I think it was a desire to be recognized for their contribution to our community.
clearly, but they were talking street signs, and that's not our purview, so, and it is theirs directly. So I think they have some civics to figure out to accomplish everything in there. The one that concerns me is what the comments were made about Lake Nighthorse. I mean, the management plan is a result of years of negotiation with the Ute tribe. Both Ute tribes.
I just share the observations that I summarized.
Agree. So, and I don't know what further action you really want to take on that issue.
Move it forward.
I think there needs to, it can't just be stagnant. And I'd also like to clarify that at that meeting, they made clear that, you know, the original plan for a park out there, I think is something like 38 million, and that they don't expect to see that at this level. I think there's a real desire from the conversations I had in the room to see a plan for what a park can look like out there and what the, discussions with the community out there of what would be desired. So I think what I'm trying to direct Amber to do is take some staff action so that this doesn't become a one-off meeting. So I have a few more, and thank you for bearing with me, but it's my only opportunity to get the follow-up done. We had a presentation a while ago about ICE. We had and the engagement in the community that night. I asked for clarification of what is happening, some involvement there. And then we had a follow-up letter from one of the participants who provided some clear direction on the kind of information we'd like to see. Because, one side will have a view, another side will have a view, and somewhere in the middle is the truth. And then one of the things that I remember happened, because the mayor spoke about this, is Senator Bennett's office, John Whitney, had pulled together a community discussion around the immigrant community here and ICE actions. And so while I know it may make sense to talk police to ICE agents, it also may make sense to talk a federal representative to gain information about a federal agency. So I thought that that's a good idea to think about. Again, I'm trying to just provide the interim city manager with the council direction to move.
And I'm on that one, and there's a meeting that was scheduled for today that took place. I have not been briefed on that yet, so.
But think about inviting John, the Senator Bennett's groups that might have other information.
We can do that. So we're looking at collecting all the information, and we'll see what can fit into this.
I have two more items. We have received a flood of emails about the 32nd Street Bridge. They are coming in, and they're only coming to City Council, and Councilor Baxter and I will address this when we eventually share our findings and discussions around the advisory boards, in part because there's no way for people to actually write to the advisory boards without writing to their personal addresses. That's a different section, discussion. The issue is that we've been individually, and I thank Councilor Baxter for taking the lead on this, and I'm trying to pick up the slack since she took a long term. We've been individually sending these to the appropriate advisory boards so they're aware of the communication. Now, I understand that can be overwhelming to them. And first of all, it can be overwhelming to us who have to constantly do it. But we take that on in the spirit of making certain that everyone has this vital community feedback. The requests have come in and came into me today. Can you not direct staff to compile these every couple of days, all of them in one email, and send them to them? And I explained I can't direct staff to do anything, but I can ask if council, how would council like to handle making certain that the appropriate boards are aware of the community feedback coming in, particularly right now as it relates to the bridge?
So, Barbara, if I may, one of the members of the Natural Lands Board proposed a wonderful concept of giving people access to a website, whatever this looks like, so that they can give their comments to that website, and then each of the advisory board members may view that so that they can do it at the time that works well for them. It's all in one place. All of us can look at it. So I forwarded that to the interim city manager, and she is diligently working on a concept that will work. It may not look exactly like that, but
in the interim, though, and I think that's a great solution, I really do, but it's not going to be resolved in the next 3 weeks. In the interim, I'm happy to continue as each one comes in, sending it up.
I have a solution.
Thank you.
So what we're looking at is I can create a file similar to an FTP site, and for this current project, we can send the link to the board. It's how we worked with the long-term finance committee, set up all of the information, sent them the link, all of the information was there. I can take all of the emails, I can stick them in the folder, and I can send them to the boards. When we're looking at, what we're looking for is a long-term solution where all of the information is available to anyone that wants to see it. At this point, I need to check our firewalls, and I'm trying to find a solution so the information is there and readily available at all times. But in this circumstance, we can solve the problem by getting the board's information, and then we can do a comment summary, so have all of the emails created into a PDF, and then that can be attached to the board packet, and then that would be available for the public.
So if we send them to your office right now, you'll handle the next step?
Correct. Anything that is sent to city council based on the conversation we had at the last meeting, I
Right.
receive. And what I've been
We get
doing is.
individual letters.
And if you get individual letters, if you forward it to me, my office, we will put that into effect. We'll be working on it this week, so I'd like to say that I can have that ready next week.
That's great, thank you, Amber. And my last.
I might
oh, go
say
ahead.
too, I mean, I don't think, there's a lot of emails talk about with your permission and asking permission. I mean, once they send it to you, it's a public record, right? So that's, we don't need to gain their permission to forward that to anybody. So there's an extra piece of communication, and you can use that if you like.
It's a courtesy, I don't mind
I
it.
think in that communication, it's really imperative not to, if you're going to circulate it it becomes a serial meeting, if in fact you're voicing your opinion.
I always just say thank you for your feedback. With your permission, may I forward this to you?
I agree. Sometimes
Sometimes some folks have written to me and asked, what was your position? And I do answer that question. But I think that's important. No, I get it, but I thank you. My last, because I know I've been talking, thank you, Dean, is, as elected officials, I would like to suggest that we as a council, and I think it's a council responsibility, consider holding a town hall for our community. And I don't have the logistics work out, but I think it would be important for us to answer questions that the community may have, or issues, and it could be issues around the bridge, the budget, the CBI, 1A, the Arts Commission. I mean, I can envision anything, but we're an elected official, and I think that might be a really helpful method of engaging the public and correcting, in some cases, misinformation or incorrect or assumptions that maybe just aren't accurate. I'd like to propose that. And we may not reach a decision here because there's only 3, but I will bring it back up again then.
a town hall sounds great. I think it's a matter of when and how. And, I'm 100% against dealing with the misinformation that's out there in the community on a number of topics. And so if this is a vehicle to reduce the disinformation that's out there and being perpetuated every day, I'm for that. I would suggest that it be scheduled as in one of our study session time periods. And so that it's not adding yet another meeting to our agenda. But we dedicate one of our study sessions to become a public forum, and we can label that town hall if that's the right terminology for it.
My desire would be that if we could combine it when it could be televised, and that might require some special activities. I just think that gives us greater reach to the public. This is a limited space for people. But I know other communities do this, and they've moved from a coffee shop, this was the Montrose example, from a coffee shop to a community center, having these, let's talk about these issues. And so I think that could really bridge some divides and build some community.
I think, the City of Durango is not without its public outreach efforts on a number of specific fronts. And this would be a way to deal with a number of issues all in one basket, if you will.
And, it could be that no one shows up, but at least we tried.
Yeah. And again, I'd be, because of the level of involvement that we already, and now you're reaching out individually as well with business hours and so forth, there's a lot of opportunity to engage with the council. I just think it's good to have all of us in one spot. And
Yeah, and I agree. I think the town hall concept's a great idea. I'm not certain that the timing of the way our study sessions are would work best for the majority of people to be able, who might want to come, to be able to come. And I also know that our study session time is pretty tight at this point, so I would advocate for a different timing personally. That's just my.
Do we want to wait for the other two to have a full reaching consensus, or if three people suggest it? I'm very cognizant of the fact that I'm suggesting something and it would require participation by two other people not here. So I'm happy to delay that discussion.
Well, I think, can we add it to the next study session meeting?
Yeah.
And,
Or I'll bring it up at the next city council.
We can add, so we have the Durango Mesa area plan and the sustainability update next Tuesday, and we could add that to the discussion.
Yeah, I think it's a,
And I think it's.
I don't know what timing you're looking at
Everyone will have their
either, but
calendar.
it's something certainly we can bring up at the retreat.
well, I think there's a lot of issues out there right now. And it came to me, I started thinking about it when I saw a lot of comments on Facebook and in the Durango Herald. And I started thinking, we're elected officials. Why not consider this relatively soon? You know, I'm not wanting to get out ahead of the February 18th discussions or anything like that, but I think there is a real merit in having people not only speak for 3 minutes, but speaking and asking us particular questions and us answering them. And I think there's real value in that, and I think it could be very beneficial to us and to the community.
Well, you mentioned that, I wouldn't want it to supersede the public engagement that we are, special public engagement, I might add, about the bridge. So I wouldn't want it to occur till after the bridge conversation.
And that's 2 weeks from now. And
I actually couldn't.
I can't imagine getting something scheduled that quickly.
Right.
Well, and so moving on then to the next, are you complete, Barbara?
I am finished. Thank you for
That was a
hearing
great
me. And
segue, actually.
I did want to segue into what I knew you had listed as
Thank
your
you.
item.
So I wanted to talk about a discussion around the 32nd Street Bridge. I think it's imperative that the city council listen to the community's response that we've had, the significant and overwhelming, essentially, objection to the project, so that we have a further discussion of it. And I believe that city council needs to put it on the agenda for a future discussion, so that we can talk about what are the next steps. I think it's absolutely fabulous that staff has taken the initiative of getting together a timing during this month of public engagement process, so people can make even more comments, which is awesome. And I know on the 18th, we're going to have a further conversation about information and more public engagement. But I think the council actually needs to sit down after that point in time and talk about where do we go from here? What steps do we take next? So I'd like to,
I
I'd set that on the
totally
next
support.
possible agenda.
You know, I have been very clear that I think that we have an opportunity, and in my own opinion, we have an obligation to reconsider this bridge. And so I think it's a responsibility. And I think that I always want to make clear that I appreciate the years of work that have gone into this discussion, but I also believe that as an elected official, we are, the buck stops with us, and we are responsible for evaluating what circumstances may have changed, what competing priorities are there for funding, because this is a trade-off. There are trade-offs for any expenditure like that. And how are we ensuring we address the greatest good for the greatest number of people?
So my request would be that we have that entire conversation on the first city council meeting in March, which
First
is
city council meeting in March, which is the 2nd,
the second. Is that?
March 2nd.
That's a Monday, right? It's not.
And it was moved.
Right.
Oh, let me check.
Yes, because of Super Tuesday.
So I might add, I agree. I mean, that's the logical conclusion, but, I also want to fully respect the public process, that that 5 people on council or 3 people or 2 people on council don't, after one picture in the Herald, overturn 20 years of work on this topic. So there will be a public process as long as I'm involved, and that starts with this, whether that culminates in a decision by us in that quick of a manner or not. I think it should be discussed at that time, and because we'll either build it or we won't in its current form, or it'll be altered, or a number of alternatives that are out there. But clearly it is a public process, and it should always remain a public process, not council, in terms of the design of the bridge, in terms of if a bridge, and it's been presented as an either-or concept. I want this instead, I want the Camino del Rio instead of that bridge. I want a park in Three Springs. I want the completion of trail. All those things, the public needs to know, those are already in the works. So if you trade one, it's not a trade-off. So that's what's, in terms of prioritizations. There will be an underpass, an overpass, or something like that if the upcoming study says there will be. And that's already a consideration. So it's not giving up one for the other. And it's kind of been portrayed as that. It's been $4 million. Well, I can tell you it's getting more expensive every day. So if the completion of the Animas River Trail is important for the 20-year vision of the Animas River Trail, and we don't create an attractive nuisance at 32nd Street by having this wonderful trail that comes to a pinch point at 32nd Street, and you got to walk across four lanes of traffic with your dog or your stroller or your bike, then 4 years from now, the next council says, why didn't they do that? And it's now $8 million. That's also
I understand
a problem. So just to say, we need to look at it, we do. We need to look at it comprehensively. And those people that have been looking at it, and will look at it again, will tell us the history of it, the finances of it, and what other opportunities there are to change the course.
So sure, so all I'm asking for and suggesting is that we as a council revisit this and take into account the things we're hearing and have a discussion about where do we go from here. I'm not suggesting that we make a decision to cut the bridge or to change the bridge or to do this or do that. The question is, we need to discuss where do we go from here, given the feedback that we've received and the information that we have. I personally want to honor that overwhelming expression from our community. So that would be my recommendation, is that we have it on the 2nd, and if that works for you guys, it's a beginning of a conversation. It's not a final decision about what happens. It's a beginning of a conversation. Does that work for you?
Oh, that's the only logical outcome from that.
Okay, excellent.
From that series of public comments.
So can I ask a question for direction?
Yeah.
On that item, we will have that appear on the agenda under council, for
Okay.
council discussion.
Okay.
Would you like an agenda document with an action, or just
I think we have to
open up
wait.
discussion?
I think we have to wait until we see the feedback from February 18th.
And the other,
But I think we need to let the community know that we're hearing them.
Okay.
And that we are going to have a robust consideration of the feedback we've been receiving.
Because that meeting, the last meeting will be on the 27th, which is Thursday, and the agenda packet goes out on the 28th, and that's why I'm asking. Because in order to compile all of that feedback, if that's what you're asking for within the document, it's less than a 24-hour turnaround.
Yeah, and Amber, I would not suggest that you need to prepare all of the dozens of letters that we've been receiving. They're in all of our inboxes.
Right.
So I think that we can hold ourselves responsible for those items. I think that I would be interested in the surveys that have been taking place in the Durango Herald that I have read about. I'd be interested in how those surveys were conducted, the outcomes, any issues that were used to prevent double voting or anything like that. I see those surveys, and I'd like more information about them.
Okay.
I actually went back, so there were 2 surveys, one in November of 19 and then this most recent one. So it's very interesting. So I think your questions about the foundation of them is also very good.
I think we could all benefit from understanding what goes into that.
So I hear, and that was my point exactly, is it's a discussion, further discussion. It's not meant to be a
You'll have the
decision.
discussion,
at
and
that
then
time.
if we can add another discussion item the following week where you could have all of your documentation to further the discussion after the public feedback on, what would it be, the 20th? Not even.
So I would like some clarification, because when we had this discussion in the two-day budget retreat in early October, I actually proposed that we slow down this process and have some deeper consideration, and I was told that we were under a deadline. This was from Director Metz, that we were under a deadline and that this project had to go forward in a certain time frame to meet the criteria. So I guess I'm also wondering, how has that changed, or how does that impact the deadline I was told that we were under?
I think you're hearing that the preponderance of emails has changed that.
Sure,
equation.
I just want to know, because it was, well, we have to have this built to get the money, we have to have it built by a certain amount of time.
I'll find out about the grant
Thank you.
requirements and deadlines.
That would be helpful.
I don't have any more agenda items.
Okay,
I'm
well, it's been robust, and thank you, and thanks for everyone out there listening in. And with that, this meeting's adjourned.